Welcome again to Wickerson Studios. My name is Michael Wickerson. I will call this a hoo-hoo bird for a lack of a better term, and basically it's just the application of this template that I'm playing with some C script nodes. Not too tricky to figure out, but let's have a look into it. Turn my turntable off. It's generating this form, and it's the template itself is here, which I'd like to start getting people playing with or customizing or changing. It's just one template of an infinite possibilities, but you'll see basically what I've done is I've called it playful and experimental. It's starting with inputs. I happen to base it on 4 points, which means you hardly have to begin with that geometry of 4 points. And then I'm taking it through number structures to build things, through a series of iterations, for each loops, random generators, then into a few methods and constructors, then back into the same iteration format, then dealing with vectors. Sorry, I should scroll it out since some iterations, making polylines, and then slowly doing some manipulation with that, taking it over into surfaces. So from number to point to line to surface, that's basically how I think when it comes to modeling. And if you don't model in that order and you model from taking big things apart, that's fine. My template's pretty simple because when I was done processing it, I ended up with these 3 bits of information, which, as you can see, are basically vectors controlling the geometries of what happens with the points. There is a series of surfaces, and there's a series of piped curves that contain those surfaces. And I did go in and use the loft tool and a pipe in the end and vectors display, but the rest of it is all C, 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 C. A little bit of creating a vector here, which I guess I didn't need to do, but I did. C, 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 C vector scripts. So you're slowly learning how to write it. When you get one you want, you might want to package this into a kind of creative, formally sculptured plugin for the odd sculptor that wants to work this way. The other thing I have are these 4 points, and they are driving all the data, and they are driving data because of their attributes as I go in here and use my first script. So actually, the first scripts I did was I took those points and I decided to find a point between the 2 sets. So I took these two, I took these two, I took these two, and I took, or maybe I took these two, these two, these two. I can't remember. But they plugged in here and they produced another series of points which play off of that. I don't have them visual. Um, uh, but basically, they create a series of 4 points, which you can see there, and these create a series of 4 points. And then I go in and I create a structure to find point attributes, which is basically ptx, pty, ptz. At least I think that's what I wrote in the script. So let's just jump into the C script. Yeah, ptxyz to define ABC, and then I put everything in the absolute value because I didn't want to get screwed up when I was constructing trees of data. And this is something you can look in your panel tool. This seems to be a way I'm going about this. You can see the numbers are all of a sudden being generated into these nice trees of information. Pretty simple trees for information. I think they're basically, well, they're a little different on each side. That one's a little simpler. The numbers that came into that one. And that's because of the points. That's because how far they are away from the center, defining themselves as X, Y, Z. And that's kind of fun to play with. Then I took my iterations. I just want to have a smaller then, and I wanted some control to make sure these numbers didn't get out of control. So it's kind of like a little conditional filter. And you can see it pushes all the data back down to 0 in this case, and this data down to 0 to sometimes it gets up around 16. So yeah, it's an understanding of data to drive forms. And then what do I have here? Basic operations. I just have this really nice little calculator for points or for numbers. So it gives me addition, difference, multiplication. And so it saves me a lot of time in the math tab going around clicking these things. I just have one node for all. And really, that's not a hard script. If you go into there and take a look at it, there it is. Just writing it out, addition, difference, multiplication, and division, and saying exactly what that is from the inputs. So it's like a little tiny calculator. Then I've got this revolution that I'm putting through a range tool, which I could just download the range tool from the sets, but I figured, what the heck, if I'm learning to write C script, then I'm going to want to know how to write a range script, and those are a little more complicated. You can see it's not too complicated, making a double, setting the steps up 1, and then doing a for loop. And then doing a division, doing an addition, but also a multiplication to a division. So that's the math behind the range tool that you might want to figure out. And then that's going to generate this wonderful revolve points. And that's where those 8 points start to become real jazz. And I took a scale vector to be the direction. I thought that might be nice. Dealing with tree data, that's what I love about all these dashed lines, is you're getting more complex in your data away from what you basically were doing maybe in single item access. And then all of a sudden I'm creating two new NURBS curves. I have a little script here that creates a really nice little tiny one that just creates a NURBS curve and creates a interpolated curve. And it's using the dot notation of .NET framework or Rhino Common, which is really nice. So you can throw it into a loft, you can throw it into here if you want to see specifically what that's doing. There's the loft, there's the other one, and I've got a little bit of form here that I might want to just hide for a minute, and then you can really see what's happening. This form as the surfaces, this as the pipes, and these as the vectors. And once you take those in and you want to do a little bit of rendering and you like that customized shape, then go ahead and do that. If not, I'll take the whole form, tuck it away, and say, okay, well, what really is happening in here with all this data? I could take my vectors off, even though they're kind of fun to watch. Take the preview off, and here's our form there and there. We'll just leave the one blue, the one purple, the pipes purple, and the surfaces orange. As long as I don't click outside of my number code, you can see here I can change the radius of those pipes very quickly, except it's a 1.4 second to run script. So it would take a lot longer in Grasshopper, so use processing it a little more. So there you go, you get a funky little shape there. And it might be smart to go in and use your edit snaps and bring that down. And actually, I want that one kind of small again. Seeing what that does. Being playful in the script. There it is. It's going to take 2 seconds to run each time it does one of these iterations. I've got degrees, so I could snap this back. It'll lose its surface if I go to degree 2 or 1, but you get a really jagged, kind of cool poly line. I believe that this one should be sharp edged. Let's just see if that one's going back to 1. There we go, and give it a second. There we go. It jazzes up and does all this funk. Once again, I think it's a good practice to go in here, test your scripts first, and then do it in the edit mode, because then it'll load while that's closing out and then jump right into that form. Okay, so here we go. Let's go back and make those surfaces purple. I've got it on a, well, since I have it on render, it's not going to go below the z-axis, so I'm dipping in. So I think this one's the best one to have on orange. There we go. All right, so you're still seeing the shape. Let's do-si-do back in here a little bit. You can set your scales here for your beginning and end values, and they can reverse, which is kind of nice. So let's tighten these up and pull this one back this way a bit. Once again, 2 seconds to run each iteration. And I am doing single axis instead of list axis or tree axis, which I guess would optimize and speed up the scripts, but at least I'm starting to understand that language a little bit. Here it is. Let's take a look. Yeah, it's a little funkier form, a little flatter. The surfaces aren't so interesting. The real jazz happens as we go back in here, and we could make that simpler without having such a high value. I have to wonder if I took this value up and doubled it to 40 and processed it here, what would happen to my script, how much it would slow down. It probably would slow down quite a bit because I've just doubled it at that stage. But maybe not. Maybe it already maxed out on the numbers and the numbers weren't that high. It doesn't look like the numbers were high enough for that to even have a play. I'd have to take a look at the data in here. And probably it's still, yeah, they're still pretty low. So that's not going to have a major effect. If it went lower, it would. So let's go in here and just have a snap tool and bring that down to say 15 or lower, 12. That should have an effect on it. And it might speed up my script as well. No, it just cuts it down in height. All right, and there it is. And actually it doesn't have any surfaces anymore. So that's not very fun to me. See, I mean, you're literally sculpting with data, and you're driving your object forth. And yeah, I still have the surfaces in there. I guess I didn't notice because I remembered I was not in rendered mode and I'd clicked off. So let's just get it back into a mode that we can actually see. Keep spinning that around and see if we can see those surfaces. They're tucked in there. Probably because this is just a little too high. So I'm going to bring that down to about 0.1 on the piped diameter, and that should make it a little more visible. And you see how disconnected it's getting and how those lofts are their own little objects all nested together, and some of them skipping out, some of them being there. Anyway, it is kind of working with materials, but happens to be digital materials. And here's where the real jazz comes, and I like the top view to do this. Let's go in here and grab the top view, and let's grab those 4 points. There they are. Let's, I should be able to see the other one, but let's grab this point specifically. Okay, I just want one. I just want to grab the 1 point. Oh, I'm grabbing them all. That's why. Let's grab this 1 point and do a little shift up in the up direction. Come on up here. There we go. Now you can see the shape really starting to do some jingles and jangles because of the data that has become so accentuated. So there we go. We've just grabbed a very interesting form just by moving that up. And I've got a grid snap on so it can actually snap to it, so I don't have all these iterations trying to happen. But there you go. You're starting to open up this form, and build these other structures. And if you think sculpturally and different iterations and what you want to do, and maybe you've got optimizations because you could schedule this in a bounding box, or say I've got so much room in a gallery, what does this become? I actually very much like that one. So let's just go here and go back into here, make sure we're on this one, and let's take that to a bake group because I may want to put that into one material. Let's take this one and put this on a bake group and say that's another group material. And then let's leave our grasshopper nodes out of it. Let's throw back in here. Let's have a look here. Let's put our object 1 on here to the surface. And we'll probably want to go back into a render. There we go. And let's take this one and try and get those outer ones, group 2. And let's try and get those on there as a blue pattern, and that should be it. And there you go. You've got a nice little ghosted Google gobble and whatever you want to name it. I've got some funk going on here with an old purple. I'm not sure why that did that. But yeah, a nice little shape that maybe structurally, I don't know, you're into this type of stuff and you're curious and you're a painter or a sculptor or a fabric artist and you want to just have some fun with this. That's the power of it. And I know it's particular to my own interests. I don't expect the world to be interested in it, but I do want people that have been doing their modeling and playing around with deciding, I'm trying to figure out why my model's so huge in its rotation. Maybe I'll just leave it here. That should be able to just pick what I want to look at and spin, but no, I've got it picking up more data than I want. Anyway, my points are also on there too, so let me select my points. Well, they didn't come up. Maybe I'm still in my Grasshopper tool. Hang on. Let's get out of that. Let's shrink this down. I don't want to see those points. There we go. I don't want to see those. So let's close that up and take this one back down to seeing nothing. And I should get a good rotation now. I'm not sure why. Okay, just do it. I guess that's the one. And yeah, 1-to-1 target. Should work. There we go. Oops. I'm such a fool. All right. I think I totally blasted my piece out of the water. That was not so smart. Okay. Very strange. All right. Well, I better end on that note because that was such a highlight. I could always see it in its ghosted form as well and rebake it, so that's not a big issue, even though I think I really managed to mess this up. There it is. Perspective. I think I just blew it out of the water. So let's do the orientation. It's still there. It was just being nasty, disappearing. Anyhow, lose my mind sometimes, lose my place of thought. Shows you about how I kind of think abstractly. And there's my hoo-hoo lady off the start, which I kind of liked. And there was the data. And that was my original one I did, which is kind of nice. But then I had this other form that if I brought it into rendered mode and baked that one out again, that should come in, and then this one should come in if I do that second bake. And we'll just put those all together. There we go. We've got another baked form on top of that other structure. Of course, now I'd have to go back in. There is something strange happening there that's not baking that one, which I find interesting on the loft, why it didn't or why it kept it kind of orange. Anyway, I am interested in that form and just the control over it. It could be that the script's trying to read too much. It could be my window's open too big. Anyway, I am rambling. I like my forms. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial, and I will continue. Keep in mind this all comes from a simple template, what I call a node-based template for just getting started and thinking through the iterative qualities of what C# really does well, and it's in this area that I've found my key nodes that I want to work with. This will expand as I get better, but I do know there's an infinite amount of possibilities within that. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.